Okay, live in 3, 2, 1, go.
Ya que no hicimos el countdown, ok. Ahora sí.
Dale.
Okay, so yeah, Edo and I are a little bit delusional today because we have been torturing each other back and forth with DMs about all the terrible things that are happening in Afghanistan right now. And so we decided to go live, which is our idea of what this project from the North is going to be. We're going to do a weekly show, but we are also hoping to go live whenever the world is up in flames, like today. And eventually, we definitely want this to be an interactive thing. We were going to do it on YouTube, but we didn't know we had to ask permission 24 hours in advance. So for next time, hopefully, we'll be able to be on YouTube and our subscribers and everyone who follows us can join us. But yeah, like I said, it's been a sad few days for those of us who are always looking at the news internationally and caring about what happens in the rest of the world and seeing the images out of Afghanistan. And Edu, you who are an official refugee, so you put it so well on a voice note to me today about why we care about this so much, people like you and I, because we realize probably that if we were just first worlders with no context of misery, we probably wouldn't care that much. So Edu, I want you to say how you feel first and why you feel that way.
So yeah, as I was saying to you on that voice note, I feel because let's start with like a lot of the arguments against the United States having a presence in Afghanistan and overall Western countries and liberal countries and democracies in the world, NATO and all that, to take an important role in countries such as Afghanistan to prevent these kind of things from happening, is that a lot of people from these countries, the ones that are voting for a president, for a prime minister, the ones that are paying the taxes for the armies, a lot of them rightfully ask, why should we spend money, fighting a war overseas? But the thing is that they don't really seem to have the same context, and I came to realize that as people that are coming first and second generation immigrants, especially that are coming from these regimes, those of us who have fled Venezuela, who have fled Cuba, who have fled Nicaragua, again, like this, the same group, our audience, our public, ourselves, right? Where we understand how dangerous this geopolitics situation is, where the United States and NATO and the Western world seem to like continue to lose their strength, their from a geopolitical perspective, right? While more and more countries are becoming more radicalized, more authoritarian, more fundamentalist, and they're all being backed by regimes such as the Chinese regime in this scenario, or the Iran regime in different scenarios, not particularly this one. So we understand how this can come to affect us. Not maybe not today, maybe not in 5 years, but maybe in a few decades we're gonna start seeing the effects of this coming home. Like we're definitely gonna feel this in America. We're gonna feel this in Canada. We are already seeing this. How we are constantly, as more and more globalized the economy becomes, how more constricted we are speaking our minds against the Chinese regime, or against what's happening in Afghanistan, or against what's happening in Belarus or anywhere in the world, because now these people, these regimes, through money, through power, now they're having a grasp that they didn't have in the public discourse nowadays. So as I was saying to you, it's not fair. I don't consider it to be fair that me living here in Canada, you living in the United States, we have to be constantly in fear of what could happen if these things keep happening. And like we were just talking about this last week. We didn't know that it was gonna happen so fast, but Kabul fell yesterday or the day before.
Apparently, not even the CIA knew. Can we talk about the intelligence failure also in all of this and what that tells us? Because we are Venezuelans. We are also hoping that the US would be a positive, a strong ally for those of us who want freedom in Venezuela. But this is telling us not only that the US doesn't even have the intelligence capabilities that it had before, but that it doesn't care to.
It doesn't care to, and like I do believe them that they were caught off guard, because what we're seeing, the images that we're seeing from Kabul, from how rushed this last few days have been for the United States personnel, the embassy, the military personnel, the Afghan people working with the United States government, how desperate this exodus has been. So I believe them that they didn't know, but that also tells you that you
I
don't
believe
even
you.
care.
But that's even worse that they didn't know. I mean, Biden's speech today, let's just get into it because it was absolutely shameful, just like the action in it. I mean, for those of you who don't know, we have 9 listeners, which is very exciting to me. So thank you.
That's good to
Um,
know.
Biden made a speech today after days after he should have given that speech,
Yeah.
and basically just blamed everything on the Afghani citizens, government, and military, just throwing them under the bus completely, saying they didn't want to fight for their country. Why should Americans fight for them?
And I
Um,
believe you have some
but the
numbers.
truth is, as he admitted, that the US didn't expect Kabul to fall this
Mhm.
quickly. And then Biden blamed it on, well, we expected them to fight more than they did. What do you think about, Biden's complete, like the argument that most first worlders now believe, which is if the Afghanistani people won't fight for themselves, why should we care?
Here's the thing, right? The United States had, how long has it been since they entered Afghanistan?
You
20
went
years.
mute on me.
I went mute on you. Can you hear me now?
Ahora sí.
Oh, perfect. Live from New York. It's Saturday night. In any case, yeah. So let's take that proposition that the United States and Biden, it seems to be like the official statement, right? It's like, oh, they were not able to fight for themselves. They didn't want to fight for themselves. Why should we? But it's not that the United States got there yesterday. They didn't get there a year ago. They've been there since you and I were babies. This is like America's longest war. So when they want to, like, they want to do like Poncio Pilato si se quieren lavar las manos, and they say this doesn't have to do anything like at all with us. We
A hero. I'm the only US president that is going to have the courage to end this, no matter what people say, even though the popular opinion is to do what he's doing.
Yeah, and that speaks to a problem of the American culture. This is what we were talking about. This is not a Biden thing. This is not a Trump thing. This is a bipartisan thing. They all wanted out of Afghanistan, and they all wanted to rush that. No one cared about what was going to happen after. No one really had the intention of really helping the Afghani government be a stable nation. And it's insane
Well,
to me.
Biden lied today and said we were never there for nation building. We were only there for counterterrorism reasons.
So 20
First of all,
years, 20 years for counterterrorism, really?
I want to say hi to the people that are writing in the chat because it's very exciting for me. FM
Hello.
Panto, hi, and Warp01, hello to you as well. I told you this comment, ew, that just pissed me off because every time Biden has argumented that he doesn't regret doing what he did and he's doing the right thing, he cites, that Bin Laden is dead and they achieved that in the raid that he opposed. For anyone who's read Obama's book, it's very clear what role Biden played in that administration, and it was don't listen to the generals and just stay as far out as you can. And now he says that look, that's proof that we are victorious in our war in the Middle East, and now it's time to leave.
It's a very American center view, right? It's like we are safe because we defeated Al Qaeda, who was the only threat that the mainland, sorry, United States had, right? So, and that seems to be the discourse, and I'm pretty sure that most of the American people are just gonna agree with him because
Well, a big part of the MAGA crowd and what made Trump popular was the same speech of the far left. We are not the police of the world. Why should we spend our resources helping these savages? Basically, I was telling Elu that Biden's speech sounded like it could have been Trump's. Like the only thing that was missing is him calling the Afghani people savages, which he basically did in other words. He said basically, there's nothing to do to help these people. They cannot be helped.
They cannot be held. They are beyond salvation. And no, like, there was not enough comments on that. What was it, like a 30-minute, less than that, like a 10-minute address, something like that. No comment on the human rights situation that's already developing right now. People are like grabbing for their lives to the outside of the planes of all the planes that are evacuating the U.S. personnel from the embassy and the Afghan
Actually,
personnel.
people died because they grabbed onto the US plane as it was leaving and they fell from it. Like that is the level of desperation, and President Biden didn't have one word of sympathy or compassion for the people of Afghanistan, especially the women and girls who did have a better life with US presence there. That's part of the misinformation that's going on around both in the far right and the far left, the isolationist of always, saying that US presence hadn't improved things at all, that there was no hope. That's a lie, Edu. I wanted to share something that our friend Tony Frangi shared on Twitter that I think
Shoutouts to Tony.
really. What?
Shoutouts to Tony. He's a cool guy.
He is great. And he shared something. This basically says it all. Was there violence in Afghanistan while we were there? Yes. Were things perfect? No. But this tells you everything. According to the World Bank, between 2003 and 2017, the percentage of Afghani girls in high school increased from 6% to 39%. In 1999, before the American invasion, there wasn't even one girl going to high school. So uh, things will really drastically change in for the negative for the people in Afghanistan now that the United States has left. And don't let anyone tell you that our presence there wasn't keeping up a certain peace.
We were seeing that, we were discussing that a couple minutes ago, actually. One of the majors from one of the main parts of the city of Kabul. It's a female. It's a woman. Sorry, major. One of the first majors. One of the first women to hold like political office in Afghanistan. She just tweeted that, or expressed on social media, that she's fearing for her life. That they don't know when, but she knows that they are coming. And by them, she refers to the Taliban. So if this is happening to the women in power, you can imagine how every girl, every woman in Afghanistan is feeling right now. This is a country of tens of millions of people. If we take that 50% of them are women, we're talking about almost 15 million women that overnight, seamlessly and helplessly lost all their rights. And I'm not
So
just saying their rights to do certain things. If you actually look up the list of rights that the Taliban are taking away from them, it's draconian. It's subhumane. It's not even second-class citizens. And this all happened overnight, and we're just letting it happen because we cannot continue this war, apparently.
And that I wanted to point out as well with what you're saying, that now all the socialist squad and the far left, they're arguing because they are always pretending that they care about human rights. So the only thing they will say about the issue is we need to take the refugees.
Oh, now you want to take the refugees. Now, how are you gonna are you gonna take 20 million refugees? Are you gonna do that, Alejandro Casio Cortez? Are you gonna take 20 million refugees? Or
And
are you gonna help them take back their land?
I
That's
have an enraging fact, another enraging fact about the Biden administration that has really disappointed in the last weeks. This is from journalist Oma Sadiq. Despite warning that a Taliban takeover was both imminent and a threat to vulnerable Afghans, particularly women, data from the State Department shows that the U.S. has accepted fewer than 500 refugees from Afghanistan this year. So, well, imagine what the Taliban are going to do to any person that at any point collaborated with the United States in any way.
imagine. I just want to cry.
No, it's
I
horrible. Like
this is
this
horrible. this is this is a disaster, and like it's not something that could have not been prevented. Like that's what the official line of the United States government seems to be, of the Biden administration, the Trump administration, is that, oh, this was unavoidable. No, it wasn't
Well, that
unavoidable.
that's the rhetoric that those who will not say anything bad about the Biden administration are saying, that we were just delaying the inevitable, and Biden is actually very brave for taking on the end of the fight in Afghanistan. But Elu, what do you say? And we have to talk about this. The one who became close with the Taliban and signed this terrible deal that the Taliban never fulfilled, but we did, was Trump, of course. And when it came out that he was planning on meeting with the Taliban in Camp David, the country rightfully was outraged,
Yeah.
because we are not supposed to sit down with the Taliban. Trump did an agreement with them, okay, but Biden did not have to fulfill that agreement
No.
because the Taliban had already broken it.
He said that
So
he said that on live television. He had to, and to Biden's credit, and I shouldn't give him any credit because I'm really mad at him for everything that's going on. But to his credit, while I was watching the broadcast, something that I couldn't avoid thinking is how different this is from Trump. Like, at least there's some level of honesty thing. Like, he's owned into his
I
bullshit.
didn't think that. My comment was exactly the opposite. This could have been a Trump speech, more
No,
polished and kind, but
in a
the
way, no, but like in a way, like obviously, like the message is the same as the Trump message, but the way that the message is portrayed is completely different. That's what I meant by saying that. But in any case, uh, the decision was there. After May, the United States could have escalated their involvement in Afghanistan, and by escalated, it just pretty much meaning keeping the status quo. Because if there's a reason why the Taliban got so fast into Kabul, is because they knew the United States were withdrawing to begin with. But that's another topic. You could have either stayed after May, keep things as they were, and try to look into a different direction. Maybe escalate the conflict. Maybe let's see what we're doing wrong. Why is the Afghan government not working? Let's see what we do, or let's just take the back door and leave as quick as we can. And he went with B. And
well, obviously Mike Pompeo and Trump are saying that they would have retreated in the correct way. But who knows what would have happened, under Trump. I actually don't think it would have been much different than this.
says some comments in the chat. Thank you, chat, for listening and coming
Let's do
in.
it.
Warp says, bring something to the table. One of the things that women are not going to be able to do now, according to the Taliban law, is to go to the doctor unaccompanied or be seen by a female doctor unaccompanied. So, yeah, just something. One of the many, many things women are not going to be able to do anymore without being accompanied with a man, which is completely draconian. We don't need to discuss that.
Well,
That's what it is.
one of the iconic pictures of the fall of the Afghanistan's capital is, we all saw it, right? They immediately started covering the images of like a woman modeling.
Oh, in Kabul? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's an iconic image, and that's really what the future of Afghanistan and Afghani women is unfortunately going to look like.
And
Roddy,
again, I want to repeat, they were better off before. Everyone that's on the ground, all the journalists, most of which are super progressive, they don't usually like intervention. Richard Engel is one of them. They said people in Afghanistan were hopeful and enthusiastic about the prospect of living in a free country. And now they don't have that hope. So they are worse off today than they were a week ago. And that's that.
and that's 100% true. And Roddy says something which is, again, it goes with the line of what the government says, is that this is mostly the Afghans' fault, that the United States was there for 20 years and the Afghanis couldn't hold the Taliban for a week. But here's the thing, and here's what the other side of the story is not being told, is if the Afghans didn't go out without a fight. There are thousands and hundreds of thousands of Afghani soldiers who have fought during this 20 years to prevent the Taliban from taking back over. If the United States was planning to be there for 20 years, and their allies, the Afghani government, who's supposed to be there to replace them, who's supposed to be there to take over the United States, for the United States to live in peace and live Afghanistan as a more stable country. If the Afghan government, if the Afghan army, it's not at that point yet, that's not Afghanistan's fault. That's the United States government fault, who was there leading the whole project.
By the
So,
way, in Biden's speech, where he completely threw them under the bus, he contradicts himself because first he says, we didn't realize that the Afghani government and military would surrender so easily and the people. But then he says, when questioned why the US government didn't evacuate the people that they had to evacuate before, he says, oh, because they still had hope and they wanted to stay longer. So which one is it, 46?
it's bullshit. It's bullshit. Like, we know that's not the case. Like, we know that's not how oppressed people operate. Because we are oppressed people. We know, we
You
can
know, I
empathize with
make
this.
that connection too. I know we're not supposed to do this. We're like obsessed with Venezuela and all of this. But I like knowing people who's so bad. I mean, someone who's willing to hang off of a plane to not live under Sharia law. Those, I don't think those
And you're
people
calling them
weren't willing.
cowards? Are you calling them cowards? Really, Joe Biden? Is that what you're trying to do now? I don't know. I'm very disappointed. I mean, I'm not even an American. I didn't vote for Biden. I don't care. But I'm disappointed because Biden represents the leadership of the United States. It's supposed to represent all over the world. And
This seems, Edu, like a barrier or like a line has been crossed where, well, Biden cited the Afghanistan. This is where a cemetery of
of empires.
empires, the Soviet Union and the UK. I don't think he realized. The way I read that though was, yeah, I see this as the US retreating from the world, like the first big sign of it. And us of us in Latin America, we have seen this trend for a while. But for a while, I said, well, the US is focusing on the Middle East. They're spending billions and billions of dollars in the Middle East, well, just to withdraw. And meanwhile, now the authoritarian leaders of the world have another ally in the Taliban government regime.
Yeah, and something that I've seen a lot is that, oh, the United States doesn't have to be the world police, right? Like, oh, the United States doesn't have to be. It's not their fault. But here's the thing. Here's something that's basic in history, and everyone who has critically studied history would know that when there's a power vacuum, whatever the reason, there's a power vacuum. Someone will fill it in. Someone will step in and fill
Well,
out
we
that
just
vacuum.
in a smaller scale in Afghanistan. Just look at what happened
And
there
this
and
is
see the
and
world.
this is exactly what's happening in Afghanistan. It's like we cannot understate the implications that this has for global geopolitics. It's way beyond Afghanistan. Like, the fact that as the United States is withdrawing, the Chinese government is shaking hands with the Taliban publicly. That tells you something.
It tells everyone, it tells the bad guys of the world so much because you know what embassies had no problem in Kabul yesterday? The Russian and Chinese one. What a coincidence, no?
They have no problem. They're pretty comfy in there, and they're not gonna go anywhere because they're gonna
Well,
be
no.
there beyond the transition.
But as you said, geopolitically, this is huge, and also for Latin America. And I want to read a tweet from journalist Brian Winter about what it means for Latin America. And he says this, and I co sign it. The abrupt collapse of Afghanistan does have repercussions in Latin America, where even some allies will see it as farther proof of US decline and disengagement from its traditional spheres of influence.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. It's obvious. It's not something. I don't think the U.S. is even trying to hide it, honestly. Um,
And here's the bottom line of this and what our show is about. Because it is the popular thing to do what Biden is doing. So this issue now is an issue of what the general public in the first world thinks of their place in the world, their country's place in the world, and how they understand the rest of the world. And because we are democracies in the free countries, this is going to be a huge issue if people just decide that Russia and China should lead things.
and there's nobody else right now, at least in the world, that can fill up the shoes that the United States is trying to desperately leave empty. Today, for example, a news came out that Germany was going through their options of Afghanistan and see if they deploy a significant force there. Uh, but with the situation in Germany as it is, I was reading a friend on Twitter. He lives in Germany, and it's like it's not very popular for the German government to do this, especially right before such significant elections are coming after Angela Merkel is finally stepping down.
What are
Uh,
we gonna do? What
so
are we gonna do
nobody
with
wants to get involved because this is not popular. Getting involved across in a different place of the world, as
get here?
noble as it may seem, it's not
We
popular.
get here? How did we get here that people in the first world see these images of what's going on in Afghanistan, the testimonies, and they say, not our problem?
a,
Like,
a few things. First is the Euro American center pop culture that we live in right now. It's just inevitable. You're just gonna have to see things from the optics of the Americans, and if the Americans wants to stuck their heads up their asses, the rest of the world will follow.
well,
But
also our obsession with culture wars at this moment has a lot to do with it. We're
mhm.
not focused on, little girls being enslaved in the Middle East after we left. No, we want to show our hairy armpits on Instagram. That's our feminism in the first world.
And it also has to do it's that, but it also has to do a lot with. And to be fair, it's like, well, Iraq was a disaster, the 90s were a disaster, so they kind of don't want to get involved in that. But there's a third thing that I was thinking about today as I was working on my full-time job because Soros hasn't paid me. Sorry, the CIA hasn't paid me yet. Um, and it's that there's also the fact that the majority of the United States, and we're gonna be frank, it's middle class Americans, white Americans in particular, right? Um, and they have not gone through the same experience as people in Afghanistan have gone through, and Syria have gone through, and people in Venezuela have gone through in the last 10 years, right? That's still very fresh for us. That's why we know the importance of this. This is why we are so mad about what's going on. It's because it's relatable for us. But for those who make the decisions, those votes that actually matter, which are the white votes of the middle class America, for them it's not a relatable issue. They're fine.
And it's not a coincidence that the politicians that are becoming very popular on both sides are far leftists, far right wingers, and both isolationists. That's part of the populist speech, like we have problems to solve ourselves. We don't need to be going around spending our money across the world when we don't have universal health care, for
And I would even
example.
say it transcends the radicals because what we're seeing now it's the decision, the final decision of a moderate administration.
Yeah, but that's what happens, Edu. It starts on the radical points and then it sweeps into the rest of the
It
population.
does. It does. It suits the rest of the population, and then suddenly, if you are an American politician and you dare to bring up the prospect of war overseas, you're immediately disqualified.
Another thing that people aren't really seeing, and that I saw someone point out, this is going to bring another wave of refugees from Afghanistan to Europe. And you know what that's going to lead to? More far right populists.
It's going to bring us to more far right populists. Not enough, and that's the other thing. I said this literally yesterday, and I saw that happening today live as I was watching President Biden give his speech. Is that they're gonna say, oh well, you know what, we're out of there, all we can do is help refugees. We're gonna take a handful of refugees, the people that were working directly with the US government, which doesn't represent a 1 millionth of the population of Afghanistan, maybe 1 million, but not a thousandth of the population of Afghanistan. The big chunk of the population, the 99% of the population, it's never gonna get to see the shores of the United States of America. So no matter how you and we're seeing this a lot from like the woke squad. We're seeing this already from
They
AOC.
to say something, but they are super isolationist unless, and why do you think, Edu? They are never supporting of moving a finger internationally unless it's against Israel. It's the weirdest thing. With Israel, they're like, yeah, sanction them, like do everything against them. I wonder why.
I wonder why too. I wonder indeed. But no need to wonder further. I know why it is. Because they're hypocrites. As easy as that.
Well, I don't, Ilhan Omar, who's, I wrote an open letter to her about this. She's the first congresswoman who's a refugee. Like, she could have done so much. Why isn't she talking about what's going on in Afghanistan?
Because it doesn't matter to her.
And these are the politicians that are becoming popular, the Ilhan Omars, the Donald Trumps that have the same speech, that we don't need to be messing with anything abroad. And that's going to lead to terrible, terrible things.
But I'm gonna I'm gonna say something hopeful now. Are you prepared for something hopeful?
If I'm a cynic normally, today is not the day, but go ahead.
I'm gonna say something hopeful. And I do believe this honestly. I believe that as time goes on, there are more Venezuelan Americans, there are more Syrian Americans, more Afghan Americans, more Iranian Americans, Cuban Americans, Nicaraguan Americans. If we are able to, and I'm gonna say this, we can do it eventually if we keep raising our voices, but if we are able to, all of us, get together, all of us, and I mean especially the young people, especially people like you and me, if we manage to get together and get this message across to our friends, to our politicians, because we are the ones voting for them, we are the ones paying their salaries with our taxes. If we make our voices heard and we do it together, we have a chance to change the status quo. Not only in the United States, but in all countries that are part of NATO, in Canada, in Europe, in Latin America. It doesn't have to even be a part of NATO, but if we begin to understand that democracy is the most precious and fragile thing in the world and that we need to fight for it, we need to intervene for it, there might be a brighter future for us.
Well, and that's what we're trying to do here. And that's why we really wanted to talk about Afghanistan, because it really is right up the alley of what we're trying to do on this show from the North. Because we see very concerned how young people are, because of misinformation mostly, don't believe that free Western democracies can have a positive impact in the world. And we have to change that mindset, and we have to, especially in today's globalized era, and the post awokeness, where we say we care about human rights, we say we care about people, we say we don't discriminate based on race or religion. Then let's be real about it and put literally our money where our mouth is, because we are very privileged where we are. And if we are not conscious of the forces of evil across, they will continue advancing until they reach us. And this sounds insane to most people, but believe me, and when I saw it happening in our country.
We saw it happening in IRL in 3D. And here's another thing. If we're not gonna support interventionism across, then we need to support open borders, because that's the least that you could do.
Well, this is where Edo and I disagree, but
Chan chan chan. Open the country.
But yeah, just to kind of finish this live, I did want to point out one comment that says the US should have left Afghanistan years ago. They saw what they did to Iraq when they killed Saddam. The Iraqi people love Saddam, and we destroyed that country. That sounds a lot to me like Venezuelans love Chavez.
Yeah, no, they didn't love Saddam. Saddam was horrible. Someone was arguably one of the worst tyrants in the history of the world.
Ibaka has more to say. Democracy has no reason to be in Afghanistan. The US government implemented democracy there and basically changed the Afghan culture. This is the argument of, those people want to be oppressed. They don't like freedom. Who are you to tell them what freedom is? I simply don't believe that, because I hear it so often about my own country. And I know that my fellow Venezuelans do want democracy and freedom, no matter what the propaganda says.
And honestly, I disagree with the take. I understand where you're coming from saying that, but I want you to hear me out or something. As a Hispanic person, as a Venezuelan Canadian, even though I don't have the citizenship yet, please, Queen Elizabeth, consider that. Um, but as a future Venezuelan Canadian, I find it to be very condescending to say things like that. The Afghan people don't want democracy. We never should have imposed that on anyone. But here's the thing. Everyone wants democracy. No one wants to be oppressed. No one in the world, doesn't matter what culture you're coming from, wants to
Yeah,
be told what to do without saying something otherwise. So let's not be condescending and say, oh, the Afghans don't want to be free. Oh, the Afghans want to live like the Taliban. They don't. They've proven that they don't. And what we're going to see in the next few days and the horrible things that we're going to continue to see in the months to come are going to be a proof of that.
absolutely. And like I said, read the reports of people from the ground, of people from Afghanistan themselves. They were changing their lives before. Girls were going to school, girls were participating in society, and they liked it. So the proof is in history.
And titis, what titis. So thanks everyone for joining from the north, this time live, this time kind of improvisadísimo. We were gonna do this on YouTube, and then we found out that we couldn't because you have to wait a day after you created your account to do it. Uh,
I think it's a conspiracy. Like Chavez is coming after us somehow
they're
still.
coming after us. Nos están jalando las patas, señor Sevin. But we're still out here on Twitch. We're gonna be recording a new video on Wednesday. Hopefully, we'll get it released Friday by the latest. We're gonna be talking about Afghanistan. We're also gonna be talking a lot all the things that are going on in the world. So again,
Yeah, basically, Afghanistan is just the last advance of authoritarianism worldwide. So lots to talk about.
there's a lot to talk about. So anyway, this has been
And
from the north.
thank you guys for everyone who joined. But we also, I received a couple of messages of viewers who were in Venezuela and couldn't get on Twitch because I think it's too like heavy for the internet
Yeah,
there or whatever. So I wanted to give a shout out, especially to hold on, I always forget his name on Air Zombie. He's a big fan of us, and he was saying that he can't wait to see it on YouTube. So we're gonna put it on YouTube for everyone who couldn't see it. And thank you so much.
thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Zombie. We will post it up there. This has been from the north. My name is Hermania,
Y yo soy Edu.
and see you later, alligator.